They reached out to Kansas saying this is them, that they talked to the attorney general there, was recommended to go to some kind of we verified that program was going and that would be consistent, but we are still running down leads to verify. But if I could put Dennis Rader here per positive working before Cindy's disappearance and in here doing things after her disappearance, that shows a pattern. And again, we believe we have found several things. It'll take more of an investigation. I can't tell you where it's going, but I can tell you I have some of the top, most dedicated people in the United States that sent people here and took an in-depth look at what we had, went back, reached out to the ones that they felt like would bring the most to the investigation, and they believe what we found to be substantial and needed followed up on. Can anybody ever tell you on a case where it's going to end? No, but I can assure you this: we will follow each and every lead. We will evaluate everything with some of the top professionals in their field, and we will try to get answers to questions that I think anybody has when it comes to this case.
Can you talk about the makeup of your task force? If it's not OSBI on it, who have you assembled?
I believe we released a full name of everybody that was going to be participating.
It's on a press release that I put on our CSO.net.
You know, I guess looking at that task force, I think we counted maybe one or two active law enforcement folks. Everybody else is retired folks. Why aren't there, active folks, OSBI, KBI, people like that, FBI that are listed in that task force?
That's the same question that I have, because I've shared that information with them. For instance, when we did the dig in Park City, we had coordinated before to meet with KBI there. And then that morning when we called the KBI agent that was going to meet us, they had been assigned to something and couldn't get there. So said, you guys take care of it. And then that night I got a call from one of the main people that we'd been dealing with KBI. And they said, Sheriff, what did you find? And I said, not KBI.
And I guess, what do you think this task force will be able to find in that decades of other investigations?
Well, a lot. Because did you know Dennis Rader only talked for the first 30 hours and that everything recovered in those search warrants, he was never questioned about? All the drawings, all the notations, his timelines, the codes, all that stuff. Dennis lawyered up. And then ask yourself this: why would a man who confessed to all the crimes he did suddenly lawyer up and never speak again? I think the district attorney knows why criminals lawyer up and refuse to talk. I think the viewers out there have a good idea. So again, I've went over things with Dennis Rader that no law enforcement, according to him, has ever went over, and he was revealing a lot. So where are we going to go? I don't know. But I can tell you this, just like the drawings, I can show you a drawing of an actual murder that matches the crime scene photo to a T. So when I find large amounts of similar drawings in the same fashion, that makes me want to make sure that there's no other victims. And if there's anybody out there that can contradict that, I want them to come forward, because I don't want to waste my time. There's been days in the last month that I can verify I've worked almost 24 hours straight, both on this investigation and current investigations, straight through, with going home, take a shower, and come right back. I represent each citizen of Osage County with honesty, integrity. I have brought numerous programs and things to this sheriff's department, improving it and working towards working together. we will continue to work with every law enforcement and any resource that we have to get answers to these cases. And again, we want to do our job, and we suggest other people do theirs. And maybe if we all do our jobs that we're supposed to do, we might actually get answers. But I can tell you, if we have to fight both ends, it's going to take a lot more time, a lot more effort, and we're going to not get the information we need. The correct thing is to work together, share information, and come up with answers. I don't know what those answers are going to be, but I can tell you from what Dennis Rader says, no one has ever went over all that information gained out of those search warrants with him. The drawings, the writings, the maps, the codes. Nobody has went item by item by item. And again, I was authorized to say that we have not been working with the district attorney's office. We've been working with federal authorities, and we will continue. And I can tell you, federal authorities have been in interviews for long periods of time. Hopefully from this, those interviews don't get shut down, because Dennis Rader now believes he is cleared and not a suspect, and the best suspect is already dead. And all that said, without any information, without any input, without any opportunity, accused to be political, when I still to this day have not officially announced that I was going to even seek another campaign. So again, we've got documentation that can prove. Was this political? Yes. Was it on our side? Absolutely not. Never even crossed our mind. And we've got good examples to show that, and will as we move forward, but in the proper place and not on national TV. Thank you.
Sheriff, concerns raised yesterday by the DA that your office, accusing your office of pigeonholing Rader into this case. Have you developed, since you started this new investigation in December, any additional strong suspects other than Rader?
Right now, everything we've been concentrating on has been Dennis Rader, and that was from what Dennis Rader said, wrote, and documented. Again, you're going to get the opinion soon from some of the top people in the United States that will give input into this and insight far above anything that I have the capability of doing. In other words, if I can't do it, I'm going to find the right person, and we're going to do it, and their credentials can't be touched.
Have you had any contact with the members of the former BTK task force with the Wichita Police Department? Those are people that interviewed Rader extensively. You know, you've said that nobody else has talked to him about these other items or drawings. Have you talked to those law enforcement officers at all?
I absolutely did. Also, at that meeting was the OSBI and the KBI.
You know, yesterday the DA said he hadn't seen any search warrants yet. I guess two-part question, or probably technically three-part. Do you have search warrants? Could you produce those either complete or redacted for people to see? And then also, why not send those over to the DA and just say, hey man, this is what we're looking at. This is where we're at in the case. We still have way more to go. This is just kind of the foundation of our case. We're still in the early stages of this.
So where we have searched has been in Kansas, and it has been by consent of the owners where we did not need a search warrant at this point. If we ever get to the point of needing a search warrant, we will probably go through the federal authorities to review and obtain those warrants.
Sheriff, I asked the district attorney yesterday, and I'm going to ask you the same question. If I'm a citizen in Osage County, now Pawnee County, and I'm seeing my two top law enforcement officers going at it like this is scary to me as a citizen.
It should be scary to you. It was scary to me. And again, I'll provide you documentation where I started addressing those concerns through the legal manner and the proper chain, not in front of the TV cameras. I addressed it straight to the places that it should be, and I kept it where it should go. I didn't want to do this today. I should be out following up on cases. But instead, I am being distracted and destroyed and have to take precious time away while we're trying to get answers and then try to repair things that were destroyed or opportunities taken by people that did not have the full insight but could have at any time reached out in any way, because I promise you there is no one out there that can say they reached out, they tried to help. We would take the hand of anybody that wanted to help us in law enforcement. And again, we hope that the people out there that have been sending good tips, good solid tips, good leads that could lead to answers, witnesses and victims that were coming forward or would have come forward will reconsider and know what was put out yesterday was untrue, unfactual, and hope that they will trust in law enforcement. And again, if it's not in me, because what has been put out, although I challenge anybody to find one thing in my law enforcement career that brings any discredit or dishonesty or mistruth in any case. I can't be more clear than that. And I really need to get back to work because we've got some stuff that we need to get back on. I appreciate you guys taking the time. I hate that we had to even be here today.
Politics aside, can you tell us a little bit about, is there any new developments from talking to Dennis Rader yesterday? Do you have new information? Is it stronger or weaker since talking to him?
Well, we do have some information. I can tell you last week we made better progress than we did this week after he learned by watching the news what he learned.
You know, you've been working on the Kinney case for a long time. You know, the original investigation, I've had some people approach me and say they had questions as to how thorough that was. Do you have all the case files? Do you have the investigator notes? And how solid of a foundation was that for you to kind of circle back and go through here and end up to where we are today looking at Dennis Rader as possibly being involved?
Well, again, all I can tell you is what we have found looking through old files and the boxes and the information. You know, if something has been taken by an investigator in the past and not returned to that box, I don't know. I mean, we have reached back and talked to at least one deputy that was actively working the case back in the day and followed up on some leads. But from that time, a lot of those people have passed or gone. And of course, everybody's memory from what happened that long ago has somewhat depleted some. You know, it's been a long time and we are on a cold trail. But believe me, we're going to leave no stone unturned as long as I'm sheriff and as long as I am directing my investigations, which I will do. I will use every resource to try to get those answers, and that's all I can do.
I need you to address one specific thing that came up yesterday. But 5 years ago, you told the Kinneys this case was solved, or you had not.
That is absolutely incorrect. And if somebody got that impression, it was wrong. I left them, my feelings were, I tried to show them that I had followed up on every lead, on everything given. At that time, I told them who I felt like, from what I had read, what I'd looked at, who could be the possible suspect. But I didn't say he would. If we would have had the information, we would have closed the case. Again, at that point in time, I didn't know about BTK, and I didn't know what he was going to tell me, and I didn't know what he had written. I didn't know all those details. So again, I'm not standing here today saying at the end of this, we're going to put BTK in jail for killing Cynthia Kinney. Okay? My hopes are we're going to follow every lead like we have every time. You know, it's not about politics on our side. And again, I still have not officially announced, because I really, really got to see how this plays out. Because if this can't be fixed, what I'm facing and what the Pawnee County Sheriff is facing, if this is not resolved, you know, I don't want to be sheriff. I'm not going to be in an environment where I have the good guys fighting the good guys and spending our time playing childish games when we should be working together as a team for the victims and the victim's family.
You said that Mr. Fisher had reached out to you, but have you reached out to his office just regarding your investigation?
I had one of our investigators reach out to him when we first developed this and have had nothing back. And again, I gave you the last communication I had with him, what it was, but I did share some email correspondence, and they've been very, very few, and those are going to be released to you today. One of those is where another documentary company was looking at another old case. Okay? The information that documentary gave to me was that would benefit the guy that's running against me for sheriff. And you'll see how that correspondence went. When it was that case, it was release everything right now to him, give them it all. Okay? Then, in a recent and ongoing, we had a company reach out wanting to do a series with 2 deputies. Okay, they reached out. My undersheriff came in and said, hey, we got this opportunity. What's your thoughts? He said this is going to be them strictly documenting 2 deputies during their shifts for this amount of time. And I said, well, what would the benefits be? Well, we decided the benefits would be like every citizen doing a ride-along with our agency. And number 2, this could be a recruitment tool in this world where it's so hard to get good applicants. This could be a recruitment tool and exposure for the county. Non-political, but it was turned around. And that weekend, before we even got to present it, I got a call saying one of the commissioners had wanted a message got to me that they had decided this was political and they were going to vote no, and they urged me to pull it from the agenda so that it wasn't an issue at the next commissioners meeting. Okay, I assure you that was political, but it was political on the other side. It was spun around, and those emails are going to be released to you today as well, or already have been. So again, we've got to get back to work. We've got stuff that needs to be done. I appreciate you guys taking the time, and I'm sure we'll talk again at some time in the future.
Find a spot here. Yeah, let's slide in.
feels like deja vu all over again.
And I'll give you this either put in the pocket or clip on if you don't mind.
Okay. I'll probably have to clip it on, so.
I can help you with that too if you need it.
Okay, let's see. See if I can do it without twisting everything like I did yesterday.
It's inevitable.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. You bet. I don't know if we can hide any of those wires. Probably not. There's too many of them. But
Once everyone gets set up, we'll try.
can you get two in there? Oh, you can clip it on the outside. Okay. I'm going to look like I bulked up here. That's okay. You want to?
Pocket on that side?
Yeah, it's might be able to get a second one in there if you want to try. Just if I have to sit down because of all the weight, you'll have to forgive me. So.
Okay, no sugar. And then do you have maybe a pant pocket?
I do.
Perfect.
I can put it in there.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay.
That works.
All righty.
Just gonna clip this.
Okay. Well, I'm serious. At some point, I may have to sit down. So I've got some ruptured discs in my back and a false knee in my left knee. So you'll have to bear with me if I ask to do that. I just came because I wanted to hear what the sheriff had to say. I heard he was going to have a press conference. No one mentioned to me specifically what was going to be discussed. It's unfortunate that the gist of his press conference is personal. That doesn't help the citizens of Osage County at all. I will tell you my initial observation. I will make a statement. I'm asking the sheriff again publicly to please put aside whatever differences he may feel toward me, whatever angst he may have toward me, and let's work to resolve this case. We've got the OSBI involved now. Let's give them a chance to do their job. Let's work together, the Osage County Sheriff's Office and the OSBI. In that regard, I do want to explain something because it was in the press release yesterday and it was shared again by the sheriff today, and the information's not correct. And that is the OSBI doesn't have any independent investigative authority by state law. What that means is that the OSBI can't make the decision on their own, we're going to investigate something. The way that happens is a request is made, typically by a sheriff or by a district attorney. In some cases, the Attorney General's office, maybe a state representative. Someone has to come to them and say, would you please open an investigation? After the press release came out yesterday, I was contacted by the OSBI, and they said they wanted me to clarify something with you all, and that is that they were never requested by the sheriff to become involved in this investigation. What happened is the sheriff reached out to them and said, we'd like to share something with you, and they talked. That was the first time. The only other time it occurred was when we had that meeting that I spoke about yesterday that was in this room about 90 days ago. And at that time, there were representatives of the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, of the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, sheriff's offices in Kansas and in Missouri. Interestingly enough, I wasn't invited to attend. So the question yesterday was asked, have you reached out to the sheriff? No, because he made it pretty clear early on that I wasn't a part of this. So he didn't ask me to attend. Even though I'm the chief law enforcement officer of the district, he didn't ask me to attend. So when I heard about it, I chose to go ahead and come to the meeting with my investigator. And we sat in the very back of the room and we just politely listened. Didn't offer anything at all. We just simply wanted to hear what was being discussed and what was being said. It was during that meeting when the sheriff outlined some of the information that he shared with you, talking about the laundromat and talking about the pantyhose wasn't an issue at that point. He was talking about ADT and the Census Bureau and some of those other things. He shared all of that with a room full of very experienced law enforcement people. Every person I know that attended that with the exception of those representatives of the sheriff's office, walked out of that room asking the question, why am I here? Why was this called? Nobody understood. Okay? Now, I'm not going to cast aspersions on the sheriff. That wasn't my plan yesterday, and it was only in being honest to questions that were being proffered to me by you all that I shared with you concerns that I had. My ultimate goal here is to bring justice to the Kinney family. However that happens. If it turns out, as I said yesterday, if it turns out that Dennis Rader, there's actual evidence to show that Dennis Rader did this, and that evidence rises to the level of probable cause, I will ask for an affidavit for his arrest. I will file charges for murder in the first degree and kidnapping, and I will prosecute him just like I have the other 30 to 35 homicide cases I've done in my career. You know, Sheriff Verdon says, well, he's just a prosecutor. I'm very proud of that term. I'm very proud of that term because that means that my job, as the United States Supreme Court says, I'm a minister of justice. And that's where I approach all of this. I'm a minister of justice, and I have to make sure two things happen. The first is that we've got the right person charged, and the second is that we make sure that that person is convicted for the crimes that they've committed. Now, I will share a couple of other things, and then I'll throw it open to questions. The sheriff talked about 3 cold cases that got filed before I took office. And this is in the record. You all are welcome to go back and take a look at it. Those 3 cases were filed in cooperation between Sheriff Verdon and Rex Duncan. Rex Duncan was my opponent in the last election, and it got heated between the two of us. I beat him by a margin of 66 to 34, an incumbent, 2-term incumbent DA. Okay. After he lost the election, but before I took office, Rex Duncan, in cooperation with Eddie Verdon, filed 3 cold cases. Amazingly, all of a sudden, we had evidence in 3 cold cases to file them. I got a call from someone who had worked in the sheriff's office that said, Mike, this is what happened. And I said, okay, is there any evidence? That was my first question. And his response to me was, Mike, we're not any closer now to the evidence than we were when these cases happened. So that put me in a position of having to do one of 2 things. The first was either to go ahead, and I mentioned this yesterday, either to go ahead and proceed with the prosecution knowing that we didn't have the evidence for convictions, and then, if they're found not guilty, having to explain to those families and to the public why 3 suspected killers walked free. The second option was to dismiss the cases and ask OSBI's cold case unit to look into it. So I met with the families and I talked with them and I explained the situation. One of them is here today, good young man, and he's been hurt very badly, just like the Kinneys have been hurt very badly, and I hate that. But I explained to him why we had to do that. And the reason for it is if we hadn't dismissed those cases, we have a situation where there's a constitutional requirement that somebody that's charged with the crime is entitled to a speedy trial. And you've got, depending on the case, you've got 12, 18, 24 months maximum to bring a person to trial. And if you don't do it, the judge will dismiss the case, and he'll dismiss it with prejudice, and you can't ever file it again. So that was the option I was left with. That same district attorney, Rex Duncan, has been in communication with this sheriff and with that sheriff, and I happen to know that for a fact, and they are discussing articles of impeachment against me. And I agree with the sheriff. Bring it on. Bring it on. Because I am prepared to address every allegation he's got. Because what we have is a situation where you're getting half-truths or you're being told bald-faced lies, one of the two. That's why I stood here and stared at the man the whole time. I don't have any problem doing that, just like I don't have any problem staring at his undersheriff right now, okay? Because justice is what we're supposed to be about, not this game playing. I don't care about this game playing. At the end of the day, it'll all work itself out. I've done the right thing in each and every situation. The sheriff said he made